This is Pointe
You're
FM,
listening to Pointe
99.1.
They're flat. Is that too much? This is Pointe FM's nightly news for Tuesday, 16th January 2018. A brawl at a secondary school leaves one student with multiple stab wounds and another in police custody. Antigua State College lecturers staged a second day of sit-in demanding their numerous concerns be addressed. A currency issue between St. Vincent and Trinidad could be heading for the CCJ. And Steve Bannon, a former chief strategist to the U.S. president, has been summoned to testify before a grand jury. Thank you so much for joining us this Tuesday evening. I am Phil George. The Director of Education, Claire Brown, has promised to get to the bottom of a fracas between two secondary school students today that resulted in one being stabbed multiple times. The male students of Otto's Comprehensive School, who according to reports have been feuding for some time, escalated their rift into a full-out brawl this morning in one of the classrooms. After they were separated, the two reportedly lounged at each other again. That's when one student was stabbed with a knife at least 6 times in the head and back, according to reports. He was rushed to hospital for medical treatment by ambulance. In a statement, Director of Education Claire Brown said he is aware of the fight and has condemned the incident, stating that violence in schools will not be tolerated. Mr. Brown has visited the wounded student and his parent, promising to deal with the matter in accordance with the law. Mr. Brown is awaiting a report on the incident from the school's principal before his ministry begins its investigation. The stabbing incident did not disrupt classes in a major way. The school day ended at its regular time today at 1:30 in the afternoon. Up to news time, we were unable to ascertain the condition of the wounded student. Antigua State College lecturers have staged a sit-in for the second day, protesting unsuitable working conditions at both the Golden Grove and Five Islands facilities. In a letter to the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, the Union of Tertiary Educators in Antigua and Barbuda is demanding that their concerns be addressed. According to the union, enough is not being done to deal with the lack of furniture, poor ventilation and circuitry problems at Five Islands, and vermin, fleas and termite infestation among other issues at the Golden Grove plant. The union contends that apart from minor repair work, nothing has been done since October last year. Classes were reportedly convened on Monday, but lecturers did not teach students. According to reports, when questioned by the students as to why they weren't being taught, the response by some lecturers was that they couldn't state the reason. Now, there is another major concern on the part of students. According to reports, some are being told they may not be able to write the Caribbean Advanced Proficiency Examination (CAPE) later this year, because they won't be qualified to do so due to their lack of preparation. However, that could not have been verified. Education officials were up till late this afternoon meeting with members of the Union of Tertiary Educators. The 14-year-old girl who was reported missing last evening has been found and is now in police custody. Dejanay Banton of Hatton was last seen on Friday in Hatton before she went missing, which led police to issue a missing persons bulletin. According to Banton's mother, the 14-year-old girl returned home sometime after 11 last evening. She appeared to be in good health and is currently being questioned by police on her disappearance. Banton is a student of Otto's Comprehensive School. A former Minister of Tourism in the ABLP administration has given 2 thumbs up to the port modernization project. The Honorable Malwin Joseph, who now serves as Minister of Health and the Environment, in a ringing endorsement says the expansion should be viewed as twofold. 1, the expansion of the cruise industry, and 2, the modernization of the port. He describes the work as a major leap forward in the country's economic infrastructure, which will result in ease of doing business.
The local businessmen will have ease of doing business. You know, we have been criticized from time to time that Antigua is not an easy place to do business. One of the difficulties we've had is people accessing efficient service in immigration and customs and so forth. The design and layout of this facility will go a long way in improving the efficiency.
That's a former Minister of Tourism, now Minister of Health and the Environment, the Honorable Malwin Joseph, giving a ringing endorsement to the port modernization project. Ground broke on Monday for commencement of work. The Leeward Islands cricketer who was caught last evening at Vicebird International Airport with cannabis in his footwear was remanded to prison when he appeared in court today. Kittian citizen 23-year-old Akeem Monsell Saunders is facing charges of importation of cannabis, possession of cannabis, and possession with intent to transfer. Saunders arrived in Antigua last evening on Caribbean Airlines from Jamaica in transit to St. Kitts. According to police, narcotics and customs canine officers were on duty at the airport when they carried out a search of the cricketer's suitcase and found 13 grams of cannabis. The drugs were seized and he was arrested. Saunders is a right-handed batsman who made his first-class debut for the Leeward Islands in the 2012-2013 regional 4-day competition. Well, the main opposition party says it is expecting the government not to intervene in any way as they seek answers on certain matters of public concerns through the Freedom of Information Act. The party says it has dispatched 10 letters to various civil servants and head of statutory bodies, including the Information Commissioner, requesting that they provide certain information on, among other things, the alleged disappearance of money belonging to the Port Authority. The opposition party says they are expecting written responses as soon as practicable, or in any event 20 working days of receipt of the request. Accusing the government of not providing meaningful responses to matters of public concerns, the United Progressive Party says the government should resist any temptation to influence the civil servants and other public officers who were written to. The party noted that their requests are in keeping with the provisions of Part 3 of the Freedom of Information Act. Prime Minister the Honorable Gaston Brown has given the reason behind Antigua and Barbuda's abstinence from a vote in December that condemned the U.S. President for recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital. A total of 128 countries condemned the move, 9 nations voted against the UN resolution, and 35 countries abstained. Antigua and Barbuda was one of those that chose not to vote for or against. While the reason was largely unknown, on Monday the Prime Minister elaborated on his country's position, noting that the sovereignty of each state must be respected and free from external intervention. While admitting the move by the Donald Trump administration violated several agreements, Antigua and Barbuda's position is the United States has the right to make its own decisions. It is that level of respect Antigua and Barbuda has shown the People's Republic of China, the Prime Minister noted, which has resulted in 35 years of friendly relations and for which Antigua and Barbuda has benefited immensely.
People's Republic of China and Antigua and Barbuda, it is one of what I consider to be equitable sovereignty, or equality for that matter, equality of sovereignty, in the sense that, notwithstanding our size, China respects our sovereignty, so that with that equality of sovereignty, we do not have China standing over our shoulders or criticizing us based on decisions that we take. So when we stand with Venezuela as an example, we do not have China criticizing us and saying that is dollar diplomacy. They respect our decision to stand with Venezuela, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, insofar as external intervention is concerned. We have the view that we should respect the sovereignty of all states, small, large, medium size, and that there should be no external intervention in the affairs of any state.
The Prime Minister acknowledges that Antigua and Barbuda's decisions at times may be viewed as dollar diplomacy by some, but he says the government will act at all times in the interest of the country, and he wants other nations to respect his government's position. That's a look at the national developments this Tuesday evening. We'll tell you what's happening across the region and internationally. Stay tuned. It is now 17 minutes on the hour of 7 o'clock evening time in Antigua and Barbuda and the rest of the Eastern Caribbean. The ongoing currency issue in which Vincentian traders in agricultural produce are unable to convert their earnings to Eastern Caribbean dollars after applying their trade in Trinidad and Tobago could end up before the Caribbean Court of Justice. Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, told a press conference on Monday that while his government has implemented short-term measures of a sensible, practical nature to deal with the matter in Kingstown, a long-term solution is needed. As a result of the ongoing situation, some traders have large stockpiles of Trinidad and Tobago currency in Port of Spain, and farmers in St. Vincent are reluctant to sell their produce to the traders because of the delay in getting paid. As a result, Kingstown has set up a facility at the Bank of St. Vincent and the Grenadines that allows the conversion of Trinidad and Tobago dollars to Eastern Caribbean dollars. However, Port of Spain says it is constrained by a shortage of foreign exchange in its financial sector. On Monday, for the second time this month, reporters asked Gonsalves about the situation, which he said he would raise at the upcoming intersessional meeting of Caribbean community leaders in Haiti next month. He said he will make certain suggestions about certain things which may have to do beyond what they have been trying, the Prime Minister said, adding that he knows that the Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Timothy Anthwine, has been trying with the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago to resolve the situation. Gonsalves, who is also a lawyer, said Port of Spain cannot simply say that things are difficult and it doesn't have the foreign exchange. A river in Martinique, Pointe River, is now calm after mud flow from the active volcano Mount Pelee raised concerns among residents. The mud flow took place when a section of Mount Pelee collapsed due to heavy rains, causing the level of the river to rise suddenly. Media reports indicate that although calm has returned, residents in the area are still amazed by the strength of the phenomenon. According to media reports, such phenomenon is not uncommon, as it takes place once every 10 years and is not a sign of an eruption by the volcano. Director of the Volcano Observatory, V. Cloward, said since the start of last week, there are landslides that occur upstream of the commune of Pointe, and they accumulate in the slope, and when there are violent rains, the landslides are dragged into the river. He said they know that there are always deposits at the foot of the cliff, and if there are abundant rains again, they risk having the same phenomenon again. He said for several years, an alert system has been installed in the river, but it must be reinforced. The police in the Cayman Islands say a job scam believed to be perpetrated from Jamaica has now expanded its target to include nurses. The scam, which was uncovered last year, previously targeted hospitality workers. A report on CaymanNewsService.com says the Financial Crimes Unit in the Cayman Islands says job seekers are still responding to false advertisements on social media. The advertisements solicit resumes for non-existent jobs, promising assistance with airfare, but asking people to send cash towards the processing of the work permits. The FCU says people in Cayman receive the funds and forward the money to individuals in Jamaica. The individual running the scam has used the names Odiki Mandalay as well as Carlos Chung. The FCU says the scammers may be using other names and therefore social network users should not engage in conversations with or do favors for people they have never met and whose identity they cannot vouch for. In news now internationally, U.S. media is reporting that Steve Bannon, former chief strategist to U.S. President Donald Trump, has been summoned to testify before a grand jury. He was reportedly subpoenaed by former FBI Director Robert Mueller, who is leading an inquiry into alleged collusion with Russia during the 2016 election campaign. Mr. Bannon appeared separately on Tuesday before a congressional panel. Here's more in this BBC report.
It comes just weeks after Steve Bannon was quoted in the best-selling book Fire and Fury, describing a meeting in 2016 between Donald Trump Jr. and a Kremlin-linked Russian lawyer as treasonous and unpatriotic. Robert Mueller has interviewed at least a dozen administration officials as part of his investigation into possible Russian collusion, but none was served with a subpoena. Steve Bannon, who was forced last week to step down from his post at the right-wing website Breitbart News, has tried to qualify his remarks about the 2016 meeting in the face of an onslaught from the president. Mr. Trump has mocked him as Sloppy Steve and claimed he'd lost his mind.
Police say 13 siblings who were found malnourished, some of them shackled in a California home, were torture victims. Riverside County Sheriff's Office said the mother was perplexed when officers came to rescue the siblings, who were aged 2 to 29. Investigators said they had had no previous contacts with the couple, David and Louise Turpin. Their 17-year-old daughter escaped the home in Paris from a window on Sunday and alerted police. The teenager was so emaciated that officials said she looked just 10 years old. Investigators said the unnamed girl had called 911 with a deactivated mobile phone. She showed officers photos of conditions in the suburban property 59 miles southeast of Los Angeles. Police Chief Captain Greg Fellows told a news conference today that 3 of the children were found shackled inside the home during the raid. Mr. Turpin, 57, and Mrs. Turpin, 49, have been held on charges of torture and child endangerment. Bail was set at $9 million each. Pope Francis has said he feels pain and shame over a sex abuse scandal which has rocked the Catholic Church in Chile. The Pope also asked the victims of sexual abuse committed by priests for forgiveness. He made the remarks during his first official address in Chile. The Pope had been criticized in Chile for his decision to ordain a bishop who is accused of covering up sexual abuse committed by a priest. Pope Francis has said in the past that dealing with abuse is vital for the Church's credibility and that sanctions must be imposed against perpetrators. But critics in Chile say he failed to respond to their request to review the appointment of Juan Barros as Bishop of Osorno. Parishioners in the southern Chilean city say Bishop Barros used his position in the Catholic Church to try to block an investigation into the actions of his mentor, Catholic priest Fernando Caradima. Pope Francis said today that he was sorry for the irreparable harm caused to the victims of sexual abuse by church ministers. On Monday, activists fighting for the rights of sexual abuse victims gathered in Santiago for a conference. They launched an organization called Ending Clerical Abuse, which seeks to stop child sexual abuse by the clergy worldwide. That's a quick look at developments from across the region and internationally. Stay tuned. The Weather Report is next. The weather report has brought us to the end of Point FM's nightly news. Just before we go, a recap of the headlines that made the news. A brawl at Otto's Comprehensive School leaves one student with multiple stab wounds and another in police custody. The Director of Education, Claire Brown, has promised to deal with the matter in accordance with the law. Antigua State College lecturers stage a second day of sit-in demanding their numerous concerns be addressed. A currency issue between St. Vincent and Trinidad could be heading for the Caribbean Court of Justice. And Steve Bannon, a former chief strategist to the U.S. president, has been summoned to testify before a grand jury. Thank you so much for joining us, those of you who have tuned in on radio, and for those of you who joined us on Facebook Live. On behalf of all of us here at Point FM, I am Phil George, wishing you a pleasant evening, and be sure to join me again tomorrow. Goodbye.